Ladies and gentlemen, this was a targeted attack on a police officer. This was an assassination attempt on a police officer. Last time we had a press conference, there were people, well, how do you know it's gangs? Well, that's part of our job. We know who we're dealing with. But the sad thing is, we have a community that, quite frankly, is still in a denial as far as the gang issues in this community. And more importantly, we have some folks in our community that take real offense when we use the word gang, as if it's an indictment on all people of color. That is not the truth. When we use the word gang, we're talking about a specific criminal activity. And that's what gangs are. They are criminal organizations that do criminal activity. Has nothing to do with color. As a matter of fact, 75% roughly of the gang members in this community are white. So let's get over the race issue. More importantly, we have kids dying in Spokane because of this issue. And it's a double loss because for every kid that dies, there's a kid that goes to prison. Now that violence is targeting law enforcement. That violence is targeting law enforcement across this nation. And quite frankly, you cannot continue to demonize law enforcement and think this isn't going to continue. We're not the bad guys. The narrative is all we ever do is show up and kill people. That is false. That's statistically proven false. That's research proven false. And it's time for people to stop the demonization of your law enforcement. We arrest people for the acts they commit, not the color of their skin. Period. The video I'm about ready to show you is graphic. It's graphic in language. There's not too much you want to see on the video that's horribly graphic as far as the video portion, but the audio is graphic. So those of you who are live streaming, for your audiences, if you have sensibilities to graphic language, you might want to turn this down. But this is uncut. This is as it was taken off the phone of the suspect who videoed this.
Hey, Blake, you start recording me right now. Hey, dang it, young ass out, west side off field, blood gang, nigga, I'm gonna say you bitch ass niggas how it's done out here, nigga. Real driller shit, nigga, real mother.
Just identified his gang affiliations and the gang affiliations he's talking to on the west side. As you notice, as a semi-automatic rifle, 22 caliber.
Fucking killer shit, nigga, check me out, blood. Watch this, nigga. Hey, this is Spokane Police motherfucking hangout, nigga.
He's saying that they have targeted a police cop shop. All right, this is a police hangout.
Oh, there's a cop right there, nigga.
They've identified a police officer coming into the area.
Watch.
As this police officer drives by, she noticed them and noticed that she was being filmed. The officer is actively trying to get away from them right now. That's how close they got to her. They're saying that she knows what's coming right now. They're going to start hearing gunfire right about here. Right there. That's when the other SPD officer came into view.
Hey, dang it, young ass out, west side.
And they switched target from her to him. And that's when the shots rang out. Again, uncut. This is the way it went down. We're asking the community to start taking a hard look at what's going on in this community. There are many of you that know the violence that's going on. You know who is perpetrating this violence, and it's time for you to get some courage and help us end this. If they're willing to come after law enforcement, they're willing to come after any of you. And that needs to end. This is the United States of America. This is not some third world country. This will not be tolerated. This is what we're going after. And if you want to live this lifestyle, we're coming after you. Any questions?
At the end of the video, so was the car on the right side or the left, the other cop car? So the cop car was in front, and then there was like...
I'm not quite sure where that is because of perspective, and I haven't read the entire report. You'll have to get a hold of the court docs, and I'm sure that they can tell you.
Yeah.
I think it was probably off to the left side of that portion,
Gotcha.
just based on the fact that where he was sitting.
And you said 7 shots. In the court docs, it also says like he was talking through lights. Like, I got 50 shots fired or shots off, blah blah blah. Was that just like pretending to like lure the shots?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Again, that could be bravado,
Yeah.
but they did commit a drive-by shooting before doing this. So you've seen all the court docs. You know what happened here, and you know the disturbing aspect of this is the jail phone calls that you know that are in those court documents. This individual right here is already negotiating with people in prison about his status because he's basically a made man now. You know, shot a police officer. Well, that status is going to get him put in prison. And my goal is to make anybody that wants to have that status, we're going to put you in the same place.
Are they from the west side?
No, this is local.
Sheriff, at what point did you guys make the connection that both Wynkoop and Ott were related to gangs?
We knew that pretty much at the outset. Again, we know these people. We've arrested them before. We know their lifestyles. So we always take the added step to verify, to run it through. The state of Washington actually has an RCW that you have to meet before you can declare. We take that time, but we already knew who they were. We've already dealt with them before.
Sheriff, after seeing this video, do you believe that Wynkoop and Ott were staked out after the drive-by shooting on Garland?
I think the video just told you what they were doing. I mean, this is what they were doing. They came there to shoot a police officer. They came there specifically for that reason.
You said that, I think it was like 300 or so cops were shot last year.
316 police officers were shot last year. 73 of them died. Thank goodness for ballistic vests and modern, medical procedures, or we would have had a lot more police officers dead last year, and it would have rivaled 1970, 70, and about 72, 73, when police officers were being killed for the same reason, racial hate. We as a nation need to heal. We as a nation need to realize that it is a person's actions that get them in trouble, not their skin color.
Have you seen an uptick, at least here, where you are being shot at more?
We are. Again, the violence on the streets, we've been telling you about this since September of 20. In March of 21, Chief Meidel and I stood in this room and said, we got a problem. Some of the feedback from the more progressive side of our community called us racist for using the word gang. This isn't about race. This is about people's actions. This is about people dying. And more importantly, the people that are dying are young African American males. It's a double tragedy because young African American males are going to prison for that. So it's time for the community to step up. I have some hope because I met yesterday with some community members, and I was told that they are going to meet this weekend, and hopefully they will join us in getting this stopped.
After yet another, shooting, have you seen at least your department have more fear, even just going out on the streets, doing your job?
You know, we've lived with this anxiety, if you will, for 8 years now. Ever since the falsehood of Ferguson and the demonization of law enforcement, we've lived with this for 8 years. You watch 5 Dallas police officers die because of this. You watch 3 Baton Rouge police officers die because of this. You watched 73 of us die, many of them in ambushes last year because of this. It's time to stop. The one thing that I have great hope in is the fact that the citizens, the people who go to work, raise kids, they get it. Overwhelmingly, they support their law enforcement. In this community, it's about 85%. Nationwide, it's 67%. The narrative of the people don't trust us is statistically proven false. The people trust us. It's time for activists, woke politicians to knock it off. They need to support their police. They need to help us stop this violence before the next young man dies.
Sheriff, after viewing this video, obviously, as you mentioned, these men were specifically targeting law enforcement who are tasked with keeping the public safe. For those that have any uneasy feelings about, is my safety in question now and in jeopardy because of this?
The answer is yes, most definitively. And the only way you stop this type of violence is with the courage to fight. That fight means giving us the information to put them all behind bars. And that means woke judges need to do their jobs. Woke politicians need to unravel the woke reforms that they did in this state that prevent them from going to prison. We have the ability to save our communities. This is policy now. We do a great job arresting people, but policy prevents us from holding them accountable. It's time to hold them accountable. I was asked in an interview this last week, what about the AG of the United States not willing to say that violent crime is an issue yet? My answer back was, it's time for him to wake up. And it's time for him to realize that it's policy that's driving this destruction. Change the policy. It's not guns, folks. It's people behind the guns pulling the trigger. You start putting them in prison, this goes away. That is as simple as it is, and it worked. It worked from the 1994 all the way to 2020. It was a proven model. When bad guys go to jail, crime goes down.
Sheriff, you said that this was racially motivated. Can you describe that a little bit more? What do you mean by that in this specific incident?
Didn't say it was racially motivated. I said what's killing cops is racially motivated. That means there's a hatred in this nation, and we happen to be the scapegoat of that hatred. The racial tension in this nation is causing a lot of this, and that needs to end. Your law enforcement isn't out looking for people of color to arrest or to kill, but that's the narrative that has been driven. We're here to stop this type of violence, and I don't care if they're white, I don't care if they're black, I don't care if they're Asian, I don't care if they're Ukrainian, I don't care if they're Somalian. I don't care. It's the action that we care about. So we need to do something. And it takes the entire community to help us do something. So, yeah, race is playing a factor here. You might not want to wake up to that fact, but race is causing a lot of the violence in our communities right now. And we need to put that to rest. And it's going to take courage to do that. It's going to take courage on all sides to admit, yeah, there's been wrong done. How do we move forward? And hopefully, after this weekend, we'll find a path forward.
Sheriff, sounds like there's obviously a lot of things you want people to take away from this video, but if you have to narrow it down just for the average citizen on the street,
This is the violence.
What would the takeaway to be for that?
This is the violence that's now on our streets. This violence is due to bad policy. The only way this violence stops is to change the policy and to change the narrative of your law enforcement isn't the problem and that we aren't racially motivated when we do our jobs. We simply do our jobs. The race card needs to be put back in the deck. And we need to hold people accountable. And it's going to take the entire community to do that. But this is the violence that is now on our streets. It's been there. You've heard me talk about it. You've seen me put videos up here on, literal gun battles on Sprague and Crestline, rush hour traffic. Amazingly, no one gets hit. We got lucky that day. We got lucky this day that no one was killed. But we haven't been so lucky with the young men that have died because of this violence.
I feel like people videotaping everything these days and putting Facebook live streaming and social media and all this, do you think it's almost encouraging the bad guys more often to, hey, look at what I'm going to do? Look, is that a concern in law enforcement that they just seem to, it's another tool to say, hey, look what I'm doing, I think I'm pretty cool?
That is part of it. But more importantly, what is really causing this is the fact that they know nothing's going to happen to them for committing these crimes. That's the most devastating aspect, is we have created a system where we don't hold people accountable for the crimes they commit. These people, they escaped. One of them escaped, remember? We're not and that was a violent crime they escaped for committing. He should have been in prison. He shouldn't have had the opportunity to escape. But because of bad policy, we are dumping people out of prison that should not be out of prison. Because of bad policy, we don't hold people accountable. This is a policy issue. This is not a police issue because, again, we'll put them in prison all day long. If you keep letting them out, what have you taught them? You can get away with this. No one will hold us accountable. And they'll have people out there willing to go, you only arrested him because he's African American. No, we arrested him because of the action. Now, if you're concerned about that, maybe we need to do something preventative so no other African American youth does this. That's where we solve that problem, is to prevent them from getting into this lifestyle. Pretty hard to do when you have glorified that lifestyle in pop culture. So maybe you need to take a hard look at the culture. Now, a lot of people aren't going to like what I have to say today. But it's a harsh reality. It's time for the community to look itself in the mirror and decide, is this the Spokane we want? Or do you want to have the Spokane that Spokane can be, which is one of the greatest places in this country to live? We're at that crossroads right now. We change policy, hold people accountable, take our streets back so you and your family can feel comfortable going down and visiting these multi-million-dollar parks that we have created in the downtown core, to go to the theaters, to go and do all the great things there are to do in downtown Spokane, rather than, I wouldn't go down there if I had to. The only way this changes is when the policy changes. Last question. All right, one more question. You got it.
Okay.
Two more questions.
I guess I just wanted to ask, just regarding this specific incident, regarding these two men, Wynkoop and Ott, what do you hope to see in court?
I want them to go to prison for a very long time is what I want to see. They need to be held accountable for this action, this blatant, premeditated, attempted murder. And this needs to be a message sent to all those who would try to do the same. If you do this, you're not going to come out. You will spend a very long time in prison, if not the rest of your life. That's the message that needs to be sent. There's no rehabilitation that's going to help here. Not especially when they start negotiating their status in prison before they get there. One more question?
Yeah, oh yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, I mean, officers in general are trained to have your head on the swivel all the time, and that's part of the deal. When you see something this bold, are you hearing back from deputies that are like, I mean, is there an increased sense of now my head's even on a swivel even more? Is that even a thing? I mean,
It is.
Increased sense of that?
It is, but you have to also remember, those of us that have been in law enforcement for 15, 20 years, last 8 years, this is what it's been like for us, nationwide. In 2016, 7/7/2016, when 5 Dallas police officers were killed, within a week I lost 2 deputies here. First one was a female deputy that walked in and went, you know, Sheriff, that female officer that was killed on the East Coast, 25 years old, I'm 25 years old. She has kids, I have kids. I just can't do this anymore. I can't take that risk. Next deputy came in, said, Sheriff, I love my job. I love doing what I do. But my family has given me an ultimatum, job or family, because they don't want to live this. We forget that there's another side of this, and that's the families that live this just like the police officer lives it. And every time they get demonized, i.e. the police officer, you're demonizing entire families that sit up waiting for people to come home, that dread that phone call late at night. The next person that came in, 15-year veteran. The first 2 were rookies within a year. 15-year veteran came in and went, boss, I can't do this anymore. And he looked like he hadn't slept in months. I can't do it no more. As I'll tell you what, you got 15 years in. Before you throw away 15 years, I'm going to give you a leave of absence. You go sort it out. And in a year, if you want to come in and tell me you want to lay it down, lay it down. Within 6 months, he came back and he's put his badge back on. We're committed to our communities. We're committed to protecting these communities. Yeah, we live with that fear. But if you think we're going to let punks like this take over our communities where your parents, your family, your kids, our kids live, you're out of your mind. We refuse to let the thug win. I'm just asking the community to help us make sure the thugs don't win, and to put a little bit of attention to the policies that are being passed that make it as impossible for us to hold them accountable. That's what we're asking for. Anything else?
I have one quick follow-up.
All right.
My boss texted me. You talked a lot about policy. Is there anything specific policy-wise that you're referencing? You said that were a lot.
Oh,
Is there a specific
how
policy
about
that you're
let's take a
referring-
look at the 21 reforms that they said they reformed my profession with. Those were not reforms, folks. They didn't tell us to do anything different other than you can't go after the bad guy. Let's start there. Let's start with the woke reforms that are being tried to be pushed down our throat at a county level that has prevented us from fixing a broken criminal justice system. Let's start there. Those are all policy issues, all things out of law enforcement's hands, but they're not out of the community's hands. The community, we forget, there's not this thing called government. Everybody wants to say the government. In the United States, the people are the government, and they change that government at will. Yeah, maybe you need to start thinking about that.
Do you think there's any way we would be able to get this video, or is it just
If you do a PDR, I can get you the hard copies. I'll put this back up, and you can get better position to film it.
yeah, perfect.
And but that's the best I can do for you today. If you notice, I'm flying solo. I don't have my PIO with me, so.
I know, Mark's on vacation.
Okay.
Well
All right.
deserved, hey.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, would you be able to turn off the lights?
Yes, I will get this set up however you need it set up, and